show is on, ladies and gentlemen. We are here. Hit that like button. You like, share, and subscribe. I want to thank you for joining me tonight. Today, rather. And we're going to be talking about the Passport Bros um, and what this is and about, and what the Passport Bros have been up to, and it's kind of go into part two about it. We've talked about it on part one. That's tonight on the Lawyers and Podcast Show. We're not going to keep you here that long to talk about this, but we're on. Men are going their own way, and the Passport Bros is still making news waves in this northern hemisphere of the Western nations. Passport Bros, exactly the kind of men we should avoid, by Shalom Essine. She wrote this article on documentwomen.com. Good evening and welcome to the Lawyers and Podcast Show. We're doing part two of the Passport Bros. And we're going to look and see why men are wanting to leave the United States here. We won't basically keep you for a very long time today. And welcome to my channel. This article that is written by Shalon starts out that you may have heard of the Passport Bros, whose aim is to get coupled up with women from other countries. The ideal of exploring beyond one country's border for a spouse or to find love is not a novel one, but the Passport Bros movement entails far more than that. It's strongly influenced by anti-feminist ideas and even consider an offshoot men going their own way, or MGTOW, a misogynistic, mostly online separatist community encouraging men to detach from women, which gained lots of traction after the Me Too movement backlash. Many of these Passport Bros are men from Western countries that believe women of their own countries aren't traditional enough, have too high standards, are overwhelmingly liberated or empowered or influenced by feminist ideas, and therefore unsuitable to be domesticated or make for real wives there. So this men affairs whipped out their passports and seek out their dream women in third world countries. Now, why did she have to say third world countries? They comes to countries with underprivileged women, with undebatable gender divide and economic instability. And of course, as you know, the United States is also becoming that way too, because a lot of the BRICS nations and stuff like that is making sure that they don't do as much trade but for the dollar. So we'll be talking about if you want to talk about the United States, moreover, we'll basically the next 30 years will be looking more like a third world country too, if you're not going to have the trade there, you see. But let's go on to, she's gone on to write or say that they come to countries with underprivileged women, which undebatable gender divide and economic instability. Asian countries, African countries, countries like Nigeria, one of the poorest countries in the world with women living in absolute poverty. Nigeria, which is plagued with gender based violence, where 1 in 4 girls is sexually assaulted before the age of 18. Yet, between 2019 and 2020, a country of well over 200 million people have 32 rape convictions. Okay, that's a pretty low number if it's only 200 people. Okay, so I don't see her point there if she's even making that point there. But this is the feminist talk that we basically all often hear about, the passport bros or men going their own way. We often hear that these feminists will get into our spaces and then they'll basically try to find some way to try to hate on what men are doing here. Goes on to say, she goes on to write that third world countries like Nigeria, where married women are required to produce a written letter of consent from their husbands before applying for a passport. Where barbers refuse to cut the hair of a married woman without the husband's consent. Citizenship is the legal and supreme link between an individual and her state. Yet in Nigeria, unlike men, women are not recognized as full citizens as they do not have the right to transfer citizenship to their spouses upon marriage. Now, notice she didn't talk about any of the Arab nations. She went out of another black country, another black nation. Oftentimes, these feminists have a problem with being colorblind. They just don't, they'll try to find something that is black to make their point. She didn't mention Arab countries that actually does this to their women, moreover, and far worse than countries like Nigeria. But let's continue here. She goes on to write here that this Fox interview began with a Black American passport bro apologizing after he came under heat for calling Brazilian women easy to sleep with. He's talking about Holland here, the guy that you see on the screen. Okay. In Amsterdam, a ban has been put on sex tourism, which is what the law enforcement reality believe passport bros are all about, and not finding love or finding a wife. Likewise, Brazil has warned its women about predatory passport bros and placed a similar ban. Now, Brazil is kind of different in a sense than Amsterdam. Amsterdam, passport bros ain't going there. I don't think Holloman and these guys are actually wanting to go to European countries. Now, he might do specifically, but many of the passport bros are going to countries in Latin America. Okay. Brazil is different because Brazil, of course, as most of you may know, a lot of the slaves went to Brazil. And you can pretty much find a great, beautiful Black woman in Brazil, like you can in Africa and other parts as well. But what these men are saying is that, well, when we go to these Western countries, they all act the same. It takes a lot to just get with them, and particularly we don't want to waste our time going to those places because they just like the United States, Amsterdam, whatever. This YouTube channel is run by a Black American man who flaunts the woman he connects with in other countries. One of his most recent videos, titled "She is Wifey Material," has attracted more than 30,000 views. In the videos, he announces, "Meet my girlfriend, she's so pretty," then asks her, "Can you cook?" tell them, to which the Thai women answers, yes, I can cut, I can clean. This pleases the man who says, see, this is why I came to Thailand to find a traditional woman. End quote. Okay. Now, certain things about what they're having, this is not just in America, but they're having problems even in other, what you call so-called third world countries. You can also talk about countries like China and Japan, who is dealing with women who are not getting married. They basically is also becoming what Kevin saying was called leftover women. So it's just not, happening in the West where there's leftover women. There's leftover women in Thailand, leftover women, of course, in Latin America. There is just too many women who are not getting married, though. You see what I'm saying? So for this article to this, you can tell that this woman is a feminist. She has no idea about what she's talking about, and so she's going to continue this assault and this written material, to write this. In a stark regard, she writes, are ridiculous to the point of almost being funny insult to both the women they claim to be leaving behind, but especially to the women that they are seeking out, an insult to Asian women and African women, an insult to us. Now notice she say an insult to us. Maybe she a black Nigerian feminine. We don't know. But let's keep reading. What does it mean that these men are flying out here because the women in their countries have high standards and won't have them? They say their women are traditional, wife material, submissive, all pretend terms for the broader reality that women live in better secured and more privileged economies are more empowered to call out the opposite sex on their nonsense and reject mediocrity, to hold them accountable for their misbehaviors and demand better. Okay. Now notice you can only say this kind of foolishness and get away with it in Western nations. Have you noticed that? Okay, because in these other countries, of course, women really don't have no rights. Okay. What does it mean that these bros would rather find sex and love in a third world country like Nigeria, where women are encouraged to are encouraged too fast and pray for physically abusive husbands, where women are largely held accountable for the failure of a marriage, where in many states, marriage rapes, married raped is not recognized. Marriage, marital rape is not recognized. When politicians and dignitaries wed underage girls under the cover of culture and religion. Now, I just said that has happened often in Arab countries as well. And so this Nigerian woman, she's not mentioning that either. She's not mentioning that in the countries where, men, of course, tend to say women have no rights or privileges. You just only mentioned Nigeria, So she basically have a specific, some type of animosity towards Nigerians. Like I said, Arab countries, this happens as well. Then she continues to write as she's upset about the whole passport bro movement. She says, what does it mean that passport bros would rather this climate than theirs? It means that these men aren't simply masculine, men seeking out traditional women. It means we are dealing with a rise of mediocre man children unable to adapt to the world that is no longer catering to their egos, to their breakable feelings, to their every bend and curve in the breath. Now that's where she's wrong. That's where she's wrong. Men tends to see a situation where if they see a bunch of their women out of control, Most likely they will change and switch up. The United States is fast growingly changing. It would not be the United States in the next 30 to 40 years won't be like the United States of the 1960s. And that's where they're wrong. Um, a lot of women in the United States are not understanding that most of them have to fill jobs that men are no longer doing. That is fundamentally different than what happened in 1960s and 70s, of course. And of course, as you see more businesses closing down because relationships is economic, these women are finding it very hard now to find men who is just going to marry them. And so they're listening to the feminists again. Now, these feminists basically don't care because they don't like men anyway. Okay. But I want you to understand where this woman, her hatred for men who goes overseas, like this Holloman guy. I hope I say his name right, Alan Holloman or whatever, or whoever that you see on the picture screen. White men have been traditionally going overseas, finding women, as I said, in early arenas or other problem when black men start announcing that they're doing it. Okay, and that's typically how the feminists work, black and white. They only basically make it a problem with black men in years, right? I want to talk now. Let's go back to the article, though. I want to reread this so you can get the glimpse of what's going on here. She's upset that basically men is finding love overseas are trying to go overseas, and women are doing the same thing. But see, women don't have no real traction overseas to do it because they're stuck into the Western mind, and men over there in other countries are not going to take their rudeness. Okay. And so the black feminine, she's upset because she can't get a man nor a woman. Okay. Which is why she writes articles like this. But again, what does this article say? A lot of Nigerian women or foreign women, of course, they come over here wanting white men anyway. And then they get mad and then they'll try to basically get upset with black people, but then end up being friends with Nigerians who basically they should be trying to get with, even if they come to a foreign country, if they can't get the white man they want. You see how that works now? But again, the article though still say though, as I read earlier, what does it mean that the passport bros would rather this climate than theirs? In other words, why would they want to basically go overseas to find wives when there's women in the United States they can marry? A lot of women in the Western countries and these countries basically is not traditional. That's the point here. Okay. But what does she write here? She says, it means that these men are simply masculine men seeking out traditional women. It means we're dealing with a rise of mediocre man children unable to adapt to the world that is no longer catering to their egos, to their breakable feelings, to their every bend and curve and breath. It means that we are dealing rise of men who are unable to thrive in a world where gender equality and the promotion and protection of women's rights have made more impact, a world that is gradually decentering their gaze. We are opening our borders to men who would rather pick up their passports and come over to our part of the world that have resisted progress and is slow to catch up. What these men are seeking out is servitude, not partnerships, and it's a slap in our face. There you go. There's a problem there, right there. There's no such thing as partnerships and relationships. One person is going to always do more than the other. What these men are seeking out is servitude, which is saying slavery, not partnership, and is a slap in our faces, in the faces of women living in the countries that these men have come to find their ideal romantic and sexual partners, a disrespectful, non-cynical idea. Now, if you look at this, they've been calling domestic relationships servitude, like cooking, cleaning, things of that nature, which is traditional women values. If you had any sense, a woman would want those things to happen in her home. She goes on to say, because she keep on clearly talking about African women here. She goes on to say here that African women already have enough on their plates. Okay, so notice she's talking about her own race or people. She says African women already have enough on their plates, navigating countries with social and cultural norms stacked against them. Nigeria, you see, she keeps saying Nigeria. This is a Nigerian feminine. Nigeria is ranked the third world governed country in the world and is considered one of the most dangerous countries to live in as a woman. Passport bros are not only aware of the aggression issues that plague women from these countries, they are banking on them. Okay, so this has to be some Nigerian tether who came over to the United States. She got upset, like I said earlier, that she couldn't get a white man as she came over here, and she has something against her own race. And so when we talk there about Nigerian women, if they have these problems in Nigeria, why bring it to the States? Why bring it to Western countries? How did you get to the UK? How did you get to the United States? How did you get to other Western nations? A lot of these Nigerian women are a lot of women who comes over from foreign nations. They're not looking at black men in their own kind at first. They're looking at these white men first. And like I said earlier, when they don't get the men who they want, then that's when they start getting upset. That's when they start getting these feminine ideas. When we come back, we'll talk more and wrap up here on the Lawyers and Podcast Show. The passport bros are exactly the kind of men we should avoid. This is a article written by Shalon Essene, and I'm thinking that she's a Nigerian tether. She talks about the fact that men basically are, she have a problem with men going their own way. She's upset that men basically do not want to marry American women no more, Western women. We're back here on the Lawyers and Podcast Show. Thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe. Let's go ahead and wrap up. I know that we're waiting on it. I told you we're not going to be here on this long here. But we're talking about the Passport Bros. This week, we got more podcast, discussions coming up. The selling of Paramount Pictures is also, we've been wanting to talk about that. We'll talk more about the 2024 election, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden is doing so worse at the polls. I told you, this man's struggling. And his speeches are slurring now and stuff. The man is just doing horrible. We'll be talking about that and more on the Lawyers podcast show. But tonight we're still talking about the Passport Bros. Part two of our discussion. We had a part one. Why is women basically upset that men find it very entertaining to travel? Let these men do what they want. These men are going overseas to find love. They might getting sick and tired of the United States. Women, in the course of the United States, are definitely upset with the marriage laws of the United States. The marriage laws in the United States should be changed, in my opinion, because it doesn't benefit men at all. It's a wealth grabbing a package for women. And of course, for black women, instead of fighting the system, helping to fight the system of white supremacy, it's all about them. And so they're the same thing that the white women do here in the Western countries. And that is to marry you for 5 or 10 years and then, divorce you, wake up and say, oh, I don't want you no more. And go down there and get their divorce papers. And then before you know it, they got that wealth package because they get to walk away with a lot of things. The passport broke movement, like I said, has been going on. If men find it that they need to date a woman in another country, even though I don't agree with just being with one woman, but if they go into a situation where they have to travel overseas, then let them. Okay, let them. Some passport bros are going overseas. You're right. They are going overseas to trick off their monies and stuff. There is some that goes overseas on business trips. There's passport bros do go over there to find traditional love. There's also passport bros, into which I agree with, that want to be in a relationship with multiple women, which means that they go over there to engage in polygamy, which is not which you make polygamy a bad word, but it's really not a bad word. It's something that the Western nations have basically put on us to just date and marry one woman. But black men have always been in polygamous relationship. I won't go into that tonight, but we will have more discussion on, polygamy when we basically do our discussion on the history of black men and black women that was in polygamous relationship before the Europeans ever existed, right? So we'll talk about that coming up as well. I'm trying to find a good day to basically do that podcast where we talk about black men marrying multiple women in that time. And so we'll talk more about that upcoming when we do our Black Relationship special. But the Passport Bros basically really is just, enjoying themselves. It's always good to have your passports and go overseas to meet people, whether it be dating, business, international relationship. Black people should be traveling. They shouldn't want to just stay in a Western nation. So just to listen to a close-minded feminine, we don't have to do that. Okay, black men, we can travel anywhere we want to go. Okay, see, it only become a problem when black men do it because these women over here, they know that black men are not really, how we used to be. We used to give a lot of women here in America so many chances, and now that we're not doing it anymore, that's when they're upset. Why are you men going your own way? You're supposed to stay here in the West and let us treat you like shit, and you're supposed to give us your money and all of that. And now you smarten up and you're talking about you're a high valued man. How dare you go over and spend your money to some woman that you claim is traditional and some third world country? How dare you do that? Okay, that is something that the Western women basically are going furious for. Remember, these white dudes are doing the same thing. Hispanic dudes are doing the same thing. Typically, when white women and white boys get out of high school, these white boys typically marry their high sweetheart, their high school sweetheart, I should say. But that's not even happening as much now. These white women are going furious about that. They are here complaining that we don't want a good woman. They are here talking about you men can't go your own way. What y'all doing? Y'all don't want no traditional wife anymore. Blah, 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 blah. No, what they want to do, they want to waste their time. They want to sit around all day and nag, and they don't want to basically cook and clean. That's why we have to go overseas like the passport bros and get our women. Now, I'm not for that. I'm just saying that that's what we have to do. Some men who basically don't like confrontation, they're going to do that anyway. Men who, of course, don't have any game, who are shy, might go overseas because the women are easy to talk to overseas as well. Not to say that there's not good women in America. We're just saying that that's why certain passport bros go overseas, of course. Okay. But yeah, I'm not like that. The American women, I already know how they are. Okay. I've been dealing with them myself for years. So I don't need to go overseas to get no female. Okay. But the passport bros obviously feel like they should do. They should. They have to in order to allegedly get, traditional women. If that's the case, okay, fine. That's. But this article reminds me of this being a feminine who cares about this. Only a female who basically is upset about the passport bros would basically get upset about men going overseas. What is it that this feminist that's writing this article, what is it that she's upset about? Okay. Women in the West, specifically Black women, have to lose the attitudes. They have to be able to be submissive. They got to be able to make sure that their husbands are taken care of. Whether you're going to have, you have to decide, are you going to have a career husband, a high valued man or whatever, or are you going to have be a traditional wife, or you're going to go out there and have a traditional career? The passport bros are saying, well, we can't find those women, so we're going to go overseas and we're going to try to look for them there. By women in the West calling these women third world countries is an insult because, like I said, economically, the world is turning their back on the Western nations, and you're going to start to see the disempowering of America, and like you do in Europe now. So your women are going to be becoming more poor. The housing cost is going to go up, and people are going to start looking and feel like they're broke, just like they do right now with Joe Biden in office. The passport bros is basically saying, well, let me just go do something traditional overseas. And we basically already said, do not bring your woman, if you go overseas, back to the United States, because they're going to start adapting to this Western society. And then you're going to start getting an attitude. They're going to start talking back. They're going to become a discipline problem. And then you're going to have another situation all over again. What Western women don't understand is that while you might talk about rights and freedoms and trying to be equal to a man, there's no such thing as equality to a man, because a woman, when she's vulnerable or when she's faced with problems and issues, she's not going to be able to handle it. If you tell her, okay, it's time for you to fight, go to war, a lot of women are going to basically wouldn't want to do that. They'll become a woman then, but they don't want to do nothing that they really don't believe that they have to as a female. Okay, that's why it's no such thing as equality, because men have to deal with all that stuff. Well, I want to thank you for listening to the Lawyers and Podcast show. We just had to wrap up part 2 there of our passport conversation. If you did not listen to or listen to part 1, go back and find that video and just listen to what we're talking about on part 1, and then come on back to part 2 and listen to it. Well, again, if you have to, leave your comments, like, share, and subscribe. You've been listening to the Lawyers and Podcast show. Take care.